We're by Manger Square in Bethlehem in the West Bank after looking at the Grotto of the Nativity at the Church or Basilica of the Nativity. After lunch, we go back to a church adjacent to the Church of the Nativity, which is the St. Catherine's Church. This works as a parish church in Bethlehem and a Franciscan monastery. Here, rock cuttings and ancient tombs with various modern additions commemorate various people and traditions. It is unlikely that these locations are authentic, although St. Paula, St. Eustochium, and St. Jerome are known to be buried somewhere in the caves beneath the Church of the Nativity.
After the birth of Jesus, we know that King Herod, who was the king of the region here, so when he knew or when he heard about the birth of Jesus, he was very upset. So what he did, he ordered his men to kill all the babies of Bethlehem, the male babies 2 years under. So later they found here, like these small caves, like cemeteries, where they found small skulls for babies, bodies. The skulls, they believe it was for the babies of Bethlehem. And they estimate the number of the babies who were killed by Herod's men about 350. 350 babies, male, the all male babies, okay?
The Grotto of Jesus, which is just behind these walls of the Grotto of St. Jerome, is the oldest site continuously worshipped in Christianity. We walk back to the bus terminal, maintaining vigilance. Jerusalem having been the site of several attacks by Palestinians and Jews, particularly in 2015. Today, the status of Jerusalem remains one of the core issues in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. During the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, West Jerusalem was among the areas captured and later annexed by Israel, while East Jerusalem, including the Old City, was captured and later annexed by Jordan.
That building, this is the arena, Jerusalem Arena, where you have a basketball play, and this is a stadium for football, not American football, European football, okay, soccer, okay? Yeah, and the other side there's a big mall, this is here, in this.
Giant.
This is the best hotel and hotel food during the entire tour. However, the country's cuisine remains uninteresting. This is also the only hotel in all our trips that the hotel manager approached our group and asked us how their service was. Experiences at hotels such as this can benefit other travelers if a comment is left on the travel website TripAdvisor. The old city is about 1 square kilometer within the modern city of Jerusalem. The old city is divided into the Muslim, Christian, Armenian, and Jewish quarters. During the Six-Day War in 1967, Israeli forces captured the old city along with the rest of East Jerusalem. Burial on the Jewish cemetery started some 3,000 years ago in the First Temple period and continues to this day. The Dome of the Rock is an Islamic shrine completed in 691. The Dome of the Rock is important for Muslims, being the site where the Prophet Muhammad is said to have risen to heaven. The city of Jerusalem has been surrounded by walls for its defense since ancient times. In the Middle Bronze Age, a city named Jebus was built on the southeastern hill of Jerusalem. It was relatively small but well fortified. The Old City is an area less than 1 square kilometer within the modern city of Jerusalem. Facts being explained by our guide Ellie had all throughout the tour been extremely fascinating, coming from an extremely experienced archaeologist such as him. However, from it he had some assumptions which were subject to his own interpretations so we've learned to take them as his own opinion and may or may not go by his conclusions. The walled city was actually the whole of Jerusalem until 1860, when the first neighborhood beyond the walls were built. The core of the old city of Jerusalem has a history that is believed to go back more than 3,000 years, while the great walls that encase the old city were first built in 1538 by Sulaiman the Magnificent. We're on our way to enter the old town of Jerusalem and take a close-up look at the individual historical places. However, due to its size and the number of places to see, the time we had would not be enough. This is in addition to some sites being upheld by different religions. Instead of flowers, friends and relatives of the deceased here bring them stones and place them on top of the tombs. These may or may not be from where they come from. The walk around the old town was paved with mostly leveled roads. However, some of them were quite hilly. The duration to spend in the place based on the tour schedule versus the amount to see was also too short. It was quite tiring. There was little time to really appreciate and reflect on what we were looking at. The weather was perfect at this time of the year, but a few more days inside the old city would have been the best. This walk to the Garden of Gethsemane is full of exciting anticipation. It is the utmost religious education I could possibly think of, which we should have done a long time ago. However, travelers should always take into account circumstances affecting a place which could jeopardize a vacation. It is sometimes best to postpone, be safe, and choose a different destination. Gethsemane is an urban garden at the foot of the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. The name is derived from the Aramaic language meaning oil press. We're now at the entrance of the Garden of Gethsemane at the foot of the Mount of Olives. This is the place where Jesus prayed and his disciples slept the night before his crucifixion. Olive trees in this garden have been dated to at least 900 years. The old trees with their hollow and twisted trunks are more than 3 meters in diameter. 8 olive trees have identical DNA or are siblings. They came from cuttings belonging to the same mother tree. This church is just beside the Garden of Gethsemane and contains the rock upon which Jesus prayed. The Church of All Nations rests on the foundation of 2 earlier churches. A small 12th century Crusader chapel abandoned in 1345 and a 4th century Byzantine basilica destroyed by an earthquake in 746. The church was built between 1919 and 1924 using funds donated from many different countries. The coat of arms of 12 of the countries from which donations originated are incorporated into the ceiling. During the construction, parts of the mosaic floor of the original Byzantine church were discovered. These were preserved under glass and may be seen in the floor of the south aisle. The architect then decided to copy this 4th century mosaic design in the floor of the modern church to suggest a continuity. There was a group of Filipino pilgrims with a Filipino priest celebrating Mass when we got there. The facade of the church is supported by a row of Corinthian columns. Atop each column sits statues of the 4 evangelists. At the top is a mosaic depicting Christ as the mediator between God and mankind.
One of the gate in the old city wall of Jerusalem to go inside to the old city. Here you directly going to the Wailing Wall. Down below
The gates as we have them today were for the most part built or renovated by the Ottomans in the 1500s AD. The Zion Gate is one of 8 gates in the walls of the old city of Jerusalem. It was built in 1540. 6 sentry towers were erected in the southern segment of the wall, 4 of them situated in the Mount Zion section. In 2015, police in the area identified a suspicious-looking Arab man wearing camouflage clothing sitting by the East Jerusalem Gate's entrance. When police asked to search the man, he withdrew a knife and charged the officers. King David is the second king of the United Kingdom of Israel and Judah. He was born in 1040 and is the father of King Solomon. He is credited for composing many of the psalms contained in the Book of Psalms. The Last Supper is the final meal that Jesus shared with his apostles in Jerusalem before his crucifixion. This is commemorated by Christians on Maundy Thursday. It is the basis for the Holy Communion. This was the site of the Last Supper from which there was no dispute. However, the interior, which had been changed, does not have a complete history of its alteration. The best image which our guide gave us were the type of tables and bowls existing during those times. In the biblical narrative, David is a young shepherd who first gained fame as a musician and later by killing Goliath. He became a favorite of King Saul and a close friend of Saul's son Jonathan. After Saul and Jonathan are killed in battle, David is anointed as king. David conquers Jerusalem, taking the Ark of the Covenant into the city. King David is viewed in biblical sources as a righteous and effective king both in battle and in providing civil and criminal justice. He is described as a man after God's own heart. The site of David's burial is actually unknown, though the Tanakh locates it in the city of David. In the 4th century, he and his father were believed to be buried in Bethlehem. In the mid-19th century, a cavern on the grounds of the Byzantine and Crusader churches on Mount Zion was suspected. A limited exploration revealed human remains within a large vault. The cavern has yet to be confirmed or scientifically excavated. David is described as cementing his relations with various political and national groups through marriage. He is described as having 8 wives. The Mission Abbey is an abbey and the name of a Benedictine community in Jerusalem. The Byzantine Basilica was built under John II, Bishop of Jerusalem in the early 5th century. According to local tradition, it was on this spot that the Blessed Virgin Mary died, or at least ended her worldly existence. The church itself is called Basilica of the Assumption. In the Catholic dogma of the Assumption of Mary, the Mother of Christ was taken body and soul to heaven. Mary, also known by various titles, styles, and honorifics, was a 1st century Galilean Jewish woman of Nazareth and the mother of Jesus. Mary's name in the original manuscripts of the New Testament was based on her original Aramaic name, Mariam with a Y or Mariam with an I. A competing claim has been made that the Virgin Mary died and was buried in the city of Ephesus in present-day Turkey. This claim rests in part on the Gospel account that Christ on his cross entrusted the care of Mary to Saint John, who later went to Ephesus. The Dormition Abbey, along with other Christian sites, has been the target of occasional vandalism by extremist Israeli youth.
Yun lang pinag-usapan ng pastor namin eh.
Yes. Can you elaborate on what you're saying? Our tour guide, Eli Shukron, is an Israeli archaeologist employed by the Israel Antiquities Authority. He has made several significant finds from the period of the Second Temple of Jerusalem. In most of the places we went to, he was known or recognized by other guides and can be seen as highly regarded. A cardo was the Latin name given to a north-south street in ancient Roman cities. The Cardo Maximus was the hinge or axis of the city. Most Roman cities also had a Decumanus Maximus, an east-west street that served as a secondary main street. The Cardo Maximus was derived from the same root as cardinal, and as such was generally lined with shops and vendors and served as a hub of economic life. The Forum was normally located at or close to the intersection of the Decumanus and the Cardo. This is a video of the history of the Cardo inside the middle of the excavation. The entire roadway was originally 74 feet wide. The road itself was 40 feet wide with colonnaded and covered sidewalks on both sides to protect pedestrians from traffic and the heat of the sun. A Cardo Maximus is located in all Roman cities and military camps. The Madaba map, a floor mosaic in the Church of St. George in Madaba, Jordan, shows the ancient Roman road and a row of Corinthian columns. These are the original columns of the colonnaded street. To the left of the columns is the Roman sidewalk. During the visit of Hadrian to Judea in 130 AD, he decided to build a Roman colony and named it Aelia Capitolina. Curbs, columns, and sidewalk were also on the other side of the street. Along the path of the Cardo is a small, modern shopping center with 24 small shops. The Byzantine Emperor Justinus I may have taken part in constructing portions of the Cardo. There was previously a small Moroccan quarter in the old city. After the Six-Day War, the Moroccan quarter was destroyed to make the Western Wall Plaza. The parts of the Moroccan quarter that were not destroyed are now part of the Jewish quarter. This was the level of the old city about 1,000 years BC. Hurva Square is named so because of the Hurva Synagogue close by. The Hurva Synagogue was rebuilt in 1854, and although officially named the Beis Yaakov Synagogue, it retained its name as the Hurva.
And when we came from there. So also you remember that we saw the pizza and the coffee.
We wanted to try the Israeli version of the Middle Eastern food we're used to in Bahrain. Western fast food would be the best choice for a non-vegetarian tourist in Israel. Our colleagues had a better review of this burger place. Good Arabic food in other Middle Eastern countries can only be found after sampling extensively or in places which had already made a name for themselves. In 135 BC, when the Roman Emperor Hadrian built the city of Aelia Capitolina on the ruins of ancient Jerusalem. The 10th Legion set up their camp on the land that is now the Jewish quarter.
This socialist country.
From this vantage point, we get a great panoramic view of the Western or Wailing Wall, which we'll go to in a few minutes. This is the holiest place for the Jewish people.
The Western Wall is an ancient limestone wall in the old city of Jerusalem. It has also been called the Wailing Wall, referring to the practice of Jews weeping at the site over the destruction of the temples. Many contemporary Orthodox scholars ruled that the area in front of the wall has the status of a synagogue and must be treated with due respect. As such, men and married women are expected to cover their heads upon approaching the wall and to dress appropriately.
We're now on our way to the wall.
When departing, the custom is to walk backwards away from the wall. On Saturdays, it is forbidden to enter the area with electronic devices including cameras, which infringe on the sanctity of the Sabbath. Some Orthodox Jews warns against inserting fingers into the cracks of the wall, as they believe that the breadth of the wall constitutes part of the Temple Mount itself and retains holiness.
The Western Wall was originally erected as part of the expansion of the Second Jewish Temple by Herod the Great around 19 BC. It is considered holy due to its connection to the Temple Mount.
During the late 19th century, no formal segregation of men and women was to be found at the wall. Conflict erupted when members of the World Union for Progressive Judaism were denied the right to host a mixed gender service at the site after the Ministry of Religious Affairs insisted on maintaining the gender segregation customary at Orthodox places of worship. In 2013, the Jerusalem District Court ruled that as long as there was no other appropriate area for pluralistic prayer according to non-Orthodox custom should be allowed at the wall. This led to the expansion and renovation of the Robinson's Ark prayer area. The first Reform mixed gender prayer service to ever take place at the Western Wall was held on February 2016. In 2017, the Israeli High Court ruled that if the government of Israel could not find good cause to prohibit women reading from the Torah in prayer services at the Western Wall, women could do so.
Due to the tension between Jews and Muslims, everybody who wants to enter the area where the wall is have to be checked.
Many important events took place on Mount Moriah, which was later known as the Temple Mount. Mount Moriah, according to Jewish tradition, is a place where Adam, the first human, was created. When Abraham was commanded to prepare his son Isaac for sacrifice, the father and son went up to Mount Moriah where the binding of Isaac took place. Jacob's dream of angels ascending and descending a ladder is linked to this mountain. 3 times a day for thousands of years, Jewish prayer from around the world have been directed towards the Temple Mount.
Paper is provided for worshippers to write down their petitions.
Placing notes in the Western Wall refers to the practice of placing slips of paper containing written prayers to God into the cracks of the Western Wall. It is claimed that occurrence of such a phenomenon dates from the early 18th century and stems from the Jewish tradition that the divine presence rests upon the western wall.
Online services offer petitioners the opportunity to send their notes to the Western Wall via email, fax, text messaging, and internet. The note is then printed out and inserted in the wall. The Israeli telephone company has established such a fax service, as have a number of charitable websites. The notes are collected twice a year and buried on the nearby Mount of Olives.
Tradition says that all prayers from around the world ascend to this spot, from where they ascend to heaven. If someone is praying outside the land of Israel, he should direct his heart in the direction of Israel. When praying within Israel, direct the heart towards Jerusalem. Those in Jerusalem should direct their hearts to the temple. In Judaism, ritual washing or ablution takes two main forms: a full body immersion in a bath used for the purpose of the ritual, and a washing of the hands with a cup. A Jewish hand washing bowl with two handles is used. The water is poured over the hands 2 times, giving precedence to the dominant hand, after which a blessing is said. Be aware that there is a Western Wall tunnel, which is an underground tunnel exposing the full length of the Western Wall. The open-air portion of 60 meters allows access to an additional 485 meters of the wall.
This is now on the way out, where I was greeted and prayed over, who initially I was grateful to until he was asking for money. It was a good thing our guide saw us and pulled me away and talked to him. I would not have given him any money anyway.
The Damascus Gate. Why Damascus Gate? Because this is the gate. Through this gate, the people go into Damascus. This is the meaning. It's meaning because Jaffa take you to the port, to Tel Aviv, to Gaza, to Hebron, and Damascus Gate going all the way to the old city. Okay. Thank you very much.
We're on our way to the Lion's Gate, which is one of the 7 gates in Jerusalem's old city walls.
This unassuming and less than tidy path is where the start of the Calvary is.
The winding route from the Antonia Fortress west to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, a distance of about 600 meters, is a celebrated place of Christian pilgrimage.
The Lion's Gate is the start of Via Dolorosa, where we'll find the first station of the cross.
The 4 figures of leopards, often mistaken for lions, were placed by Sultan Sulaiman the Magnificent to celebrate the Ottoman defeat of the Mamluks in 1517.
Via Dolorosa in Latin means way of grief, way of sorrow, way of suffering, or simply painful way. The Muslim Salah, or call for prayer, greeted us.
The Via Dolorosa is the modern remnant of one of the 2 main east-west routes, or Decumanus Maximus, through Aelia Capitolina as built by Hadrian. The Church of St. Anne is a Roman Catholic church located at the start of the Via Dolorosa near the Lion's Gate and churches of the Flagellation and Condemnation in the Muslim quarter of the Old City of Jerusalem.
Based on the Arabic inscription above the entrance, this building was formerly a madrasa or an Islamic educational institution known as the Al-Madrasa of Saladin.
In the 15th century, it was considered as the most prestigious college in the city.
And since the church possesses amazing acoustics, it is perfect for Gregorian chants, with sounds moving across the open space and up from the grotto. This makes the church a pilgrimage site for soloists and choirs. In fact, a Korean choir was just finishing up when we came in.
During the renewed Muslim rule of Palestine, Christian pilgrims were only permitted inside the grotto after paying a fee.
This is one of the places our guide Ellie made a lot of archaeological discoveries when plumbers were fixing residential sewerage pipes.
Ellie and two others from the Israel Nature and Parks Authority uncovered stone steps, and it became obvious that these steps were part of the Second Temple period pool. Excavations commenced. The find was formally announced in 2005 and received substantial international media attention.
In Church of Nativity, we don't know exactly, but this is a place, this is the church that they built in the Crusade time before 1,000 years ago. Here, what we can see different kind of things that built here in this area, and the most important for us, for you, is what we see down below. You see down below the hole, and you can see stairs. On that way, that stairs take the people into the water. Why it takes the people into the water? Why? Because they need to purify themselves. Where the temple is there. And what's happened here that it was very, very important. Right?
The Pool of Bethesda is a pool of water in the Muslim quarter of Jerusalem. It is associated with healing. In the 19th century, archaeologists discovered the remains of a pool fitting the description of John's Gospel. The name of the pool is said to be derived from the Hebrew and Aramaic language, meaning house of mercy or house of grace. In both Hebrew and Aramaic, the word could also mean shame or disgrace. This dual meaning may have been appropriate since the location was seen as a place of disgrace due to the presence of invalids and as a place of grace due to the granting of healing.
We can just imagine that this street would be teeming with pilgrims, especially during the Holy Week.
This is the start of the 14 stations of the cross in the Holy Land. The Church of the Condemnation and Imposition of the Cross and the Church of the Flagellation are Roman Catholic churches located within the Franciscan compound in the Muslim quarter of the Old City of Jerusalem. The monastery stands at the traditional second station of the cross. The Church of the Condemnation and Imposition of the Cross marks the traditional spot where Jesus took up the cross after being sentenced to crucifixion. The original church was built during the Byzantine era. It was converted into a mosque before being restored to a Catholic church in 1904. The Church of the Flagellation enshrines the spot where Jesus was flogged by Roman soldiers before his journey down the Via Dolorosa to Calvary. The original church was built by the Crusaders.
This walk is actually the highlight of the tour. That is why it would have been better if this was stretched to 2 days so as to be able to visit not only the Catholic or Jewish sites but the Armenian and Orthodox churches as well. The profusion of stores selling religious icons would also have been a treat whether you're a pilgrim or a tourist. At each and every turn, there is something which might be of great significance, which could add to the treat of being here.
The third station of the cross is where Jesus falls for the first time. In this location is a Polish Catholic church purchased by Armenian Catholics based in Poland. This chapel was constructed by the Armenian Catholics who, though ethnically Armenians, are actually based in Poland. The 1947-48 renovations to the 19th century chapel were carried out with the aid of a large financial grant from the Polish army. The site was previously one of the city's Turkish baths.
This was one church which we wanted to go to, but the rest just kept on going.
The New Testament makes no mention of a meeting between Jesus and his mother during the walk to his crucifixion, but popular tradition introduces one. The fourth station, the location of a 19th century Armenian Catholic oratory, commemorates the events of this tradition. The fifth station is where Simon of Cyrene carried the cross for Jesus. At this site, the Roman soldiers forced passers-by to offer assistance to those who had been sentenced as they began the final ascent towards the crucifixion hill.